Okay, then. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I guess I'll give you a little background. I'm an atheist, and I know that there's some differences in how people will call an atheist. So to be clear on that, I think I do not claim there is no God. I claim that none of us know. But
Even me, yeah.
yeah, that would be my claim.
Okay, yeah.
We'll maybe call that agnostic. I'd call it agnostic atheist, but yeah, that's my belief. And yeah, I've come for a good conversation.
What would be proof for you that Allah existed?
So what would be proof that Allah existed? I think in order for me to be convinced of Allah's existence, it would have to be something that cannot be explained naturally. So basically, in my existence, I have never witnessed something, and I would go as far as to claim that nothing supernatural has happened. And I think that most things, everything has a naturalistic explanation. And so for some supernatural being to exist, I would have to be convinced that basically that something happens which cannot be explained naturally. Will not, but cannot. And obviously that's quite a big ask. But
Okay. You're asking for a miracle, basically. You're saying, give me a miracle,
Sure.
Something that is essentially what you're asking for, right? And you're saying that would be proof that God exists. So when you say cannot be explained naturally, there's a lot of gymnastics that people can play. So you have to be a bit more specific. For example, let's kind of play with this idea and this concept.
Sure.
You got the universe. The universe has a starting point. Do you accept what scientists say about the universe?
The universe is a starting point. Based on my research, obviously there's the Big Bang. It's not complete debate as whether that's the absolute starting point of everything, but I'm happy to agree for the sake of conversation because I don't want to just say,
I think about me, Dan, is I don't like to agree for the sake of agreeing. I like to actually have a serious conversation. I want to actually hear your positions rather than what maybe, okay, just for sake of argument, we'll go through with it. Look, I do this out of concern for other people. I don't do this out of entertainment purposes. So this is not the purpose of the conversation. So if you are actually willing to present your own kind of beliefs, not what may be the case. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So where did the Big Bang come from? Where did the energy matter? Where did these things come from?
So based off what I know, based off what I've read/listened to scientists saying, for example, I recently listened to a podcast by Sean Carroll, top physicist. He was talking about his opinions on the origins of the universe. And he was explaining how, the Big Bang is the start of our observable universe, but there's possibilities that it always existed, and there's also possibilities that it could not have happened. And for the sake of our conversation, I think this is very interesting, because if scientists are not ruling out the possibility that the universe itself is necessary, then I don't believe that other people, especially people who are not top scientists, top physicists, cosmologists, can claim that the universe was not necessary.
Look, I think you want to use too much philosophy. I don't like philosophy. I can easily do philosophy, but it just becomes a battle of I said, you said, blah, blah, blah. It's a waste from my own personal view. When you use the term necessary, you use the term, and I don't think you understood the term, by the way, from a philosophical perspective. And I'm not saying that out of disrespect or anything like that, So I hope you don't take it that way, right? Because it's if you understood what a necessary thing is in philosophical terms, you would know the universe can never be a necessary thing.
What would you define as necessary?
No, but that's why I said I don't want to go into that kind of philosophical discussion. But the philosophical discussion of what necessary is, not that we don't want to go into that discussion, but I'm just going to answer your question briefly. The philosophical definition of what is necessary is something that cannot be any other way. It is not composed out of quote unquote parts, right?
Okay, yeah.
And cannot be dependent, has to be independent, because it will have to rely on something else. So it has to be eternal, independent, not composed of parts, and cannot be any other way. We know these things don't apply to the universe. You cannot say that the universe cannot be any other way. Cannot say that the universe is not composed of parts. So if you understood the definition of what a necessary thing is, you cannot say the universe is a necessary thing. But that's why I said I don't want to go into these philosophical discussions, because philosophy, most of the time, is a waste of time, to tell you the truth. For me, it's very simple. The question is not yet answered. Where did the universe come from? You quoting a scientist to say, oh, it may be this, it may be that. This is affirming what the Quran says. The Quran says they only follow conjecture. They got no certainty. Allah says in the Quran, can something come from nothing? This is the question I'm asking you now. Can something come from absolute nothingness?
See, this is where you kind of have to get a little bit philosophical there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my response to this, the problem is that we may have different definitions of nothing, because if we...
I'll tell you my definition that I'm asking the question based upon. The absence of everything. Look, the word nothing itself defines itself. It's no thing. Just like the word triangle defines itself. Try, three, angles, right?
Yeah.
Nothing is no thing. It is no other definitions of it. So nothing means the absence of everything. When I say, can something come from the absence of everything? No space, no energy, no matter, nothing.
I would say that something cannot come from nothing by that definition, but with the caveat that I don't think we can say that there was ever nothing. Scientists do not.
I agree with you. So there was always something.
Yeah.
Okay. And if that always something is not the universe, there has to be something else.
If that always something was not the universe,
There has to be another eternal thing. Look, I'm just going by what you said. I'm not going by anything else.
Well,
It's what you said.
so okay, I want to make sure I'm on the same page.
Let me walk you through easily, right?
Yeah.
Can I have something from nothing? Therefore, there's always something, because nothingness never existed, according to what you just said. There was never nothingness, then there was always something. Okay, if that was always something that always existed, is not the universe, then it has to be something else.
If it was not the universe, then but okay, I won't get into too deep in what we count as the universe, but okay, yes, I'll agree with you there.
But what we count as universe is that which energy cannot be created or destroyed within atoms that are composed of what we refer to as the cosmos. That's the universe.
The thing is, the issue here with me is that because when we talk about when something comes from nothing, there's nobody actually has found evidence of absence of absolutely everything, right? They found
again, we're coming back to a point we already agreed upon. We agreed that there was never nothingness. We're not debating that nothingness existed. We are saying we agree with you that there was never nothingness, right? So that's precisely what we're saying. So there was always something, and that something is not the universe. Therefore, there's something else. So you disagree. So you think the universe was always there?
I think it's okay. So this is where the agnostic thing is. I think it's a possibility that the universe was always there. Also, it's a possibility that Allah created the universe.
Remember what I said to you? Quran, conjecture, not being able to say what is your position. Now, why is the possibility?
That's the problem, right? I look at evidence, and when there's not enough to make an active claim, I say that I don't know. That's the thing. So, do you mind if I quickly give an analogy to explain really my view? If you were going to walk along the street and you tell me the next person I see is going to be called James, and I say to you, I don't believe that it is going to be James. I'm not convinced that it's going to be James. I'm not saying that it's definitely not James, because it could be, but it could also be Mary, William, Terence, whatever. So if we apply that analogy to possibilities of the origin of the universe, and Allah is James, and the universe always having existed is Mary, that is my position. I do not know who.
I understand your position. And it is, as I said, it is the exact position the Quran describes people who don't believe. The idea of conjecture, the idea of I don't know, the idea of could be, could not be, I'm not sure. And when you've got that position, in reality, you're not looking for truth, because you need to start from basic foundations of accepting or rejecting certain things in order for a person to move on. Where you've got no position, then I cannot argue against or with that thing that you believe in, because you've got no premise, you've got no basis. So it's simply, when you look at the universe, what is the universe? I just described it to you. Do you agree with the definition I gave you? It's the atoms that we see, that what we observe, like the trees, everything around us, the planets, the stars, the galaxies.
Well, in generally, yes, but it could also be things that we cannot see and we cannot perceive. For example, dark matter is something that we recently discovered, and there's evidence of particles that come in and out of existence. Hence why I don't fully say we have experienced absolutely nothing, because
particles don't come in and out of existence. Okay, but before just going,
I can show you.
No, trust me, Dan. With all due respect to you, I think you are saying certain things you heard, but I think
I can link your articles. I promise you.
But that's the same thing as I'm saying. You've read something online, right? It's the same thing. Look, you are describing certain things in quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
And I think you've not really researched these things properly in order for you to speak about them. The most knowledgeable people in quantum mechanics, they say anyone who claims to know anything about quantum mechanics, he doesn't know.
That's true.
Because it's a baby science. So for you to come and claim that particles jump in and out of existence, that's a gross misunderstanding of how quantum mechanics works. Because do you know I'll tell you what, how many interpretations of quantum mechanics are there?
I don't know how many. I know that quantum field theory is the prevailing one, which scientists generally, give the most credit to.
Okay, do you know the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the basis of what you say? Do you know that it is still probabilistic? We can probabilistically tell where the particles appear, which shows that this is not randomly happening, which shows that there is external factors influencing these things that we are not yet familiar with. That does not mean they are by themselves popping in and out of existence. So do you know why you think they are by themselves popping in and out of existence? Because you start from a faulty premise, which is that everything can be explained naturally. But there might be certain things that we're not able to observe that are influencing these particles, which making these particles behave in the way that they are.
I don't disagree, but can I defend my really quickly? Okay, so if we take everything you said for granted, which I agree with, the problem is that if you're criticizing it by saying particles are not jumping in and out of existence, it doesn't really matter, because the fact is something is happening where people previously thought there was nothing. There's clearly something happening, and that
I don't think people previously were thinking there was nothing. Look, as I say, it's a baby science where we started seeing these particles. There's very many things in creation. When we started seeing them now, how do we interpret them moving and interacting is all of these different interpretations of quantum mechanics. So it's not like that people thought there was nothing and all of a sudden we started thinking there was something. But all of this is still irrelevant to what we're saying. Still, the universe exists. What you would call the universe, nothing of it that we observe is eternal. Everything in the universe has a starting point, has an ending point, has a cycle that it works in. When you say the universe is eternal, what is it that you're referring to that is always in existence? And the universe would require an explanation out of itself, because the universe is limited, which is why it's expanding, which is what you cannot expand unless you have a limit you can expand from. And the universe is organized in a specific way, which would require by definition an external explanation of itself. So even if you were to accept or to play with this game that the universe is eternal, you still would require something else other than the universe.
I disagree. I think you made a claim which is false. Saying the universe is limited. We don't know that. We know the observable universe is limited, but we have no idea what is outside of the observable universe.
Is there any credible scientist today, physicist, that does not agree that the universe is expanding?
They all agree the universe is expanding. The observable.
Do you know how they believe the universe is expanding?
Because they're measuring background radiation.
No, the background radiation is to do with the Big Bang. That's irrelevant. It's something called redshifting. It's not background radiation. You're mixing things there. Redshifting is where the fabric of space itself is stretching, which necessitates the universe is expanding. So they measure the wavelength of these galaxies, and the fabric of space itself is expanding, is stretching. That's why it's not something that people disagree upon, because something is observable. You can see fabric of space stretching, which therefore says the universe is expanding. And if something is expanding, nothing cannot be limitless because it's expanding.
But no, this is the distinction where, because this is the observable universe, right? Because there's diagrams, so they've got that big oval, right, which shows the universe and it's expanding. That is space and where as fast as light can travel, because it can only travel at the speed of light. But we don't know what is outside of that.
Again, remember what I said to you. What I said to you is to do with the fabric of space itself stretching. It's irrelevant what you can see, because you can see that the fabric itself is stretching. Even if you cannot see way further, if the fabric of space itself, like a carpet, if I can see that the carpet is stretching, I know that the fabric itself is stretching. I know that the universe itself as an entity is stretching.
Yeah, the observable universe. This is the thing.
Is there an observable universe that I'm not aware of? Okay, let me tell you that. I'll show you why you're not, with all due respect, why you're not being sincere with yourself.
No, okay, let me argue afterwards. Okay, you show your point and then I'll...
Yeah, my point would be, it's a 1 minute point. Which scientist says universe is not expanding because this is the observable universe? Or
no, I'm not.
Or it could not be expanding because this is just what we can see. These points you're making, none of them are scientific claims. They're just your claims that you made up now. Can you show me? Yeah, okay. Which scientist that is credible that said what you said?
Sean Carroll. I can link you his podcast.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so first of all,
No. Can you quote me what he said about this expansion of the universe? Because you quoted him to do with the Big Bang, not with the expansion of the universe. Can you quote what he said?
So first of all, I think I'm not sure if we're on the same page. I'm not disagreeing that the universe is expanding, right? We all know the universe is expanding. We both agree. But what I'm saying is that we cannot claim the observable universe, which is expanding, is everything that exists. There could be something else that happens which is outside of what is observable.
We cannot argue hypotheticals. We argue realities. Why are you arguing hypotheticals?
Well, that's the thing, because you're making a claim which rules out these hypotheticals.
No, I'm making a claim about the observable, because we can only talk about the observable. Could SpongeBob be dancing on the moon right now?
Could he? I mean, technically he could be. Sure, I don't have reason to believe it, but he could be.
Okay, Dan. So I'm not going to start arguing the hypothetical of SpongeBob. Okay, look, Dan.
I don't want to
Let me ask you this question, Dan. I want to finish the discussion with this question.
Sure.
Okay, Dan, is anything absolutely true, 100% known as a fact?
It's anything absolutely true.
Yeah.
There are facts. Things are true. Yes.
Why is absolutely true? Why is absolutely true?
Well, as an atheist, well, no, I guess it's more philosophical, but you can have this stuff for complete certainty. But
so there is no absolute certainty, yeah?
Yeah, there's no absolute certainty.
Are you certain that there is no absolute certainty?
Am I certain that I believe there's no absolute certainty.
So you're not certain there is no absolute certainty, which means that there could be absolute certainty, which means your position is self-defeating.
I'm not certain about anything. So
absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Okay, no. No, look, Dan. I'll let you finish as well. At least speak. Don't worry. Look, what you've displayed, Dan, is perfect case scenario that I always say, which is what I started with. The Quran saying that the people who are atheists, people who are disbelievers, they're not certain about anything. It's a great ending for you to say in the end that you're not certain about anything, which then therefore makes my discussion with you pointless. Because what you do in my discussion with you, nothing is certain, so there is no premise to argue against. And arguing hypotheticals, but there could be X, Y, and Z, which then makes pointless argument of arguing hypotheticals that would be. So I'm just telling you, look, I've had a lot of experience then with individuals who don't, I believe, spoken to them for years. So the reason I'm asking you these questions because I already know the answers that you're gonna give me. Based on them, I'm speaking to you. So look, Dan, message of Islam is very simple. I'll finish with it and then I'll let you say what you want to say. And I appreciate your good manners as well and your willingness to engage. But I prefer to kind of say things the way they are. So look, Islam is very simple. Islam says that, look, can I have something from nothing? People are born believing in a higher entity because that is a signature of God in every human being. We have studies on that. I listed them many times on my videos. So people are born innately knowing that there is a creator because Allah put that within us so we don't have these games and excuses. There could be or there couldn't be. And I believe any basic human being looking at the universe, looking at the magnificence of the universe, innately deep down, no matter what he argues with his tongue, he knows deep down that there is a creator that created all of it. And there are multiple people who came throughout time. Most of them, what did they say? They said that there is a creator. They agreed that there is one creator, is one entity that created us. And then they brought rules, regulations, they brought morality, telling us what is good and bad for us and what will happen to us after we die. What is going to happen in the next stage? What is going to happen in the afterlife? And through our investigation of those prophets and messengers and reading the scripture, the word of the creator, the revelation that comes from God, we come to conclusions what is right and wrong. Even if I was not a Muslim, I can never argue against, I know that I'll be a hypocrite to claim that there is no creator, looking at the universe the way. I would say that I'm just arguing for the sake of arguing for it, as if it's sophistry happening. The reason I'm a Muslim is because I study the evidences for Islam, knowing that Islam is the truth. And the message of Islam is very simple, that there is that creator that created you and that you should connect with that creator, learn about yourself, learn about the universe, and practice the morality that is good for you in your life, because this life is a test, whether you will do the right or the bad thing. And then there will be accountability in the afterlife. This is the message of Islam. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is one of those messengers. Believe in other messengers as well. And I do hope you pick up the Quran one day and read it. Yeah, okay. I'll let you now say what you want to say in the end. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there was a lot, and I think I won't remember to cover everything, but
it's okay. It's not. Don't take it as an argument, Dan. I was just giving you the message of Islam. I will not really making point. I was just giving you a basic message. I'm not really trying to argue. I'm just trying to give you the message of Islam. And that's it, Yes.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of claims. So your claim about belief in God being innate, I've actually done my research and I've looked at the studies you linked, I've watched your videos, and the studies, I don't think they reflect what you're interpreting from them. The study about all these children are all over the world believing in a God. It's kind of concluding that we as humans, when we're young, are naturally disposed to believing in a higher power. That's basically the conclusion of the study. And as an atheist, I don't think we can interpret from that we believe in the gods. We just believe there is a God when we're young, because
yes, okay, no problem. Finish what you're saying. I don't disagree with anything you said so far. Go ahead.
Yeah, cool. And the main thing from my point of view, which I want to get across, is I think you're not giving the arguments, the hypotheticals, which you call them.
You said they're hypotheticals. You said we cannot observe the rest of the, by definition, is a hypothetical. You said the unobservable universe, by definition, it's a hypothetical. You said that there could be things that we do not know. By your words, it's not my claim, they're hypothetical.
Well, okay.
It is a reality. Yes.
So I'm sure you've heard it before where you're saying, I don't have much of a premise because I'm not claiming stuff. But I don't have to, I can criticize.
I'm not saying claiming stuff, but I would say things that you hold to be true. I'm not saying claim stuff. There's a difference between the two.
Well, I hold a lot of things to be true.
No, not absolutely true. We already established.
Well, absolutely. Okay. I mean, you can, for the sake of conversation, pretend they're certain because, I believe that they're true.
Okay. Dan, I appreciate you coming, as I said, and I appreciate there are quite a few people in the backstage. I allow them as well to come and engage. And it was nice talking to you. Look, as I said, Dan, I'd recommend reading the Quran, actually investigate, thinking just basically about this basic premise that I mentioned, about the idea of there is anything absolutely certain. There is or there isn't, or I'm just being convinced too much by philosophy to be a hyper skeptic of nothing is absolutely certain. Because look, I had so many discussions with atheists, trust me, so many of them. And what they end up doing by listening to those type of people that you referred to and you mentioned is that you just become confused, thinking that nothing is true, and you just have to be quote unquote open-minded, which means not hold any position, that everything or anything could be possible, which then makes nothing useful, and there is no point of any conversation. I'll let you go anyways. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming on, and I appreciate your manners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.